Now that was the earlier address by the SG of the ANC, who is also at Virtue Hotel. Let's take you live there now, where a Newzroom Afrika reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, is standing by with the African National Congress President, Cyril Ramaphosa. Mapolo, it's over to you.
A very good evening to you, Tab. Indeed, we're at the Birchwood Hotel, and I'm seated with President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be having a wide-ranging interview with us, Mr. President. A big day for the African National Congress in the sense that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the first time that you've actually had to suspend a president because of what you have termed basically ill discipline.
Yes, it is the first time that the ANC in recent times has had to do so. It is the most unfortunate action that the NEC has had to take to suspend Jacob Zuma from his membership of the ANC because of exceptional circumstances which we are entitled to do in terms of the constitution of the ANC. Most unfortunate indeed, but it had to be done because of the manner in which he was deporting himself, and we have dubbed it anti-revolutionary, counter-revolutionary rather, and the ANC, NEC took this decision after much debate and discussion.
How much responsibility is the ANC willing to take for what many would say the monster that you created? On many an occasion, the ANC has defended former President Jacob Zuma to the extent that you've been criticized that you placed the ANC above the needs of the country.
Well, I guess in any situation like this, there is quite a lot of analysis and self-introspection that has to be done. The ANC itself has to do that. And yes, in doing so, we've got to also look at the various steps that we took and missteps on the way to where we are today. So the ANC has a lot to discuss within our own ranks about how this has come about. But certainly our analysis and our conclusion is that this is a counter-revolutionary act that we believe that he has taken. And that's why the NEC felt that we have to take the suspension route in dealing with him.
And how concerned are you, Mr. President, as you go into your election campaign about the province of KwaZulu-Natal with the existence of the Umkhonto weSizwe party against the backdrop of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng accounting for about 40% of your overall vote and the popularity of your former president, who you've, of course, today suspended?
Well, there are going to be about 350 or so parties that are going to be contesting these elections. Yeah. So this is a new addition against the many others, so 349. So we are not concerned. We are confident as the African National Congress that the people of South Africa still love the African National Congress. They still identify themselves with us. And of course, every party that is contesting does believe that they have support, and in our case, it has been proven support over the past 30 years. And so we go into these elections with a great deal of confidence and great assurance that we are going to emerge victorious. We are not deterred by someone's popularity or whatever, or history. We go forward as the African National Congress, confident that our people who have always supported the ANC will do so in their large numbers, and will even do so much more now as they see all these things happening.
Today, Mr. President, when you were opening the Lekgotla, you spoke about recovery, rebuilding, and of course renewal. Some would say that this process of renewal is disingenuous to the extent that when we talk about corruption, there are still many allegations and issues that have not been dealt with. Whether you talk about, some NEC members who were implicated in the state capture report. In recent times, Mr. President, in fact, the DA has called for you to sign a proclamation for the SIU to investigate your own deputy president. The Phala matter, one would argue, that is still hanging over your head, and people don't believe the outcomes of the various reports. What would you say to South Africans who are saying, well, this is just a lie?
Well, many South Africans do believe that we are a movement under renewal, that we are moving forward to renew ourselves. And in terms of the various processes that we are going through as a movement ourselves. And of course, we've always said that any form of corruption, if it is proven, we will act. And that is why we adopted a rule that says once you are charged, you have to step aside. And for us, that is a real moment of great decision. And of course, those who were named in the Zondo report, we've acted, we've said they're either going to be disciplined if they didn't go to the Integrity Commission to explain themselves, and the Zondo Commission process is still underway in terms of the various investigations, and where people need to be charged, when they are charged, they will step aside.
Mr. President, could I jump in there? How does the step aside work when in eThekwini you have, the current chairperson but former Mayor Zandile Kumete, who's on the campaign trail, but she's been charged?
She has had to step down from a government executive position. That's what she stepped aside from. And indeed, for many others, the step aside rule, which is a dynamic and a rule that is going to be reviewed on an ongoing basis, is going to be applied as we move on. So we have said that once, for instance, you are charged, you immediately have to step aside from a role where you are in the executive or representing people at an executive level. And as time goes on, we are going to be reviewing that whole process and seeing whether it works well for us or not. In the past, you might recall the ANC used to say, you are innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
That was the process we followed.
Yeah.
But like any other organization, we renew our processes, and we've moved from that to say once you're charged, you must step aside. So with that too, we will be able to review precisely the application of that.
And let's talk then about your work as well in terms of fixing the economy, high unemployment, rampant corruption. Besides the COVID-19 pandemic, what would you say you've actually achieved, Mr. President? Because as they've dubbed it, the ANC of Ramaphosa is failing South Africans in every aspect, whether you're talking about load shedding, whether you're talking about high unemployment. What do you think you've actually done?
Well, it's not so much what I've done, it's what we have been doing in government and seeking to do to put South Africa on the right footing again. The 5 years that we've been through have been years of recovery and rebuilding and also renewal. In the past 5 years, we've faced enormous challenges. One of those was, of course, state capture. And what have we done with state capture? We've stopped state capture in its tracks.
Have you, Mr. President?
We have.
What about the allegations against your deputy president?
Organizations such as SARS have been captured. Attempts were made to capture the treasury. That was stopped. Organizations or entities such as ESCOM had been captured, Transnet. And we've stopped state capture and we've regained control of those, and we are rebuilding them. And that must be seen in good light. SARS was gone. And when we came in, we immediately took steps to stop the state capture project from destroying one of our most valued institutions. And we've rebuilt the NPA, and we're rebuilding also our intelligence services. And all these had been captured and corrupted. And that should be seen as something that we have done. A lot of damage had been wrought or done in this country during that period. And as though that was not enough, then we had COVID. We dealt with COVID and saved many, many lives. Then we had the unrest in 2021. We dealt with that. We didn't do as well as we should have, and we could have been more ready. But the weakening of our security structures had been set in motion during the state capture period. And that we have also had to rebuild and reposition. And you could also talk about the budgetary challenges that, for instance, the police and the defense force face. Because, for instance, the police had been sort of denuded of even being able to hire more police. Now we've hired 20,000, we're now going to move to 30,000. So that is meaningful change to do what? To deal with criminality. And then we face the floods in KZN, in the northern, in northwest, as well as in the Eastern Cape. That too has required processes of setting aside money, budgets to deal with that. So this period, and then we've had load shedding. Now the load shedding had its roots from
in the ANC-led government before you,
as early as 1998, and mistakes were made.
Yes.
We will accept that. Mistakes were made, and as it is in life, mistakes are made. That mistake was made, and we're fixing it.
So why must people trust you now, Mr. President?
Because
it's the same thing
what we have done,
told.
what we have been able to do, even some of the mistakes,
yes,
what has been achieved far outweighs what has been done incorrectly. Because the lives of South Africans have been improved in the past 30 years. And anybody who tells me that nothing has changed in 30 years is not telling the truth. Because
we're not moving backwards. Sometimes it's not about what the statistics say, but what South Africans feel. They don't feel safe. They don't feel, as we straddle between stages 2 and 3 of load shedding, they may not feel the improvements that you speak about, Mr. President.
I would say if nothing was being done, if we were at a standstill and we were not addressing these problems, I would say right they are. But right now, a lot is being done to improve many of the challenges that we face. For instance, with load shedding, we would have been in a much worse situation. And a number of countries around the world also experience load shedding. But we are special, and we should not be having load shedding. So that's why we are addressing it. But it is also leading us to embark on another journey to reform our energy sector and to be able to bring in other players. The private sector is coming in leaps and bounds to invest. And a good and growing economy needs that. And that is what we are repositioning our economy to be. Because we are building the economy of the future. We are going through pangs and pains at the moment. For instance, this has also given us the opportunity to look at the green economy.
Yeah.
This has also given us a chance to look at a just transition. The investments that we are attracting, including getting various countries in the world to still see us as a destination for investment, is an important fact, because they would not have backed us on the just economy, just transition process if they did not see hope in us, a good future in us. So they are prepared to back us, to pour money into this economy, because they can see that we are rebuilding. The reforms that we have embarked upon for our rail, which had been also affected, yes, by years of transition.
Perhaps?
Poor appointments, we will admit all that. And that is exactly what we are seeking and doing to change. So change is underway. We are moving leaps by leaps and bounds to reform our economy, to introduce reforms. I mean, on things like that had gone on for a long time. For instance, if you wanted to apply for a water license, you waited 3 years. Today, you will get your water license within, say, 60 days or 70 days.
But for a mining license, apparently you also wait 3 years still now.
Yeah, no, but on mining license, we are actually...
Backlog of about 3,000 mining applications.
There has been a backlog because we've been waiting for the cadastral system. Cadastral system that is going to wipe out all those backlogs and be able to reposition our mining license issuance. So many of these things are under repair. We are reforming ourselves, we are rebuilding ourselves, and we are recovering. I have the fullest confidence that we are going to land in a good space because we know what has gone wrong. And much of what has gone wrong, we have put right. We have changed the trajectory. We were on a bad path. And sometimes I just wish...
So it was better, it's better now that you're here, Mr. President. The reason why I ask you all these things is because there's also a sense that you don't follow up on issues. I'll give you an example.
Yes, ma'am.
2 years ago at SONA, you said to us a social compact would be ready within 100 days.
Yes.
Next week you have a SONA, it will be 2 years, and we have not seen that social compact. You promised bullet trains. You promised us a university in Ekurhuleni. You promised us many things, Mr. President.
Well,
they have not come to fruition. In fact, Mr. President, when you were deputy president, you were the chair of that war room at ESCOM. So why would you make 4 appointments if you had 5 years to observe, to learn, to see, and by the time you come in, you just implement?
Well, no, let me actually go through some of the issues that you have mentioned. For instance, the social compact. I did say it was a period when I really thought we would have it in hand in a short space of time. It was not the case. And it was not the case because at that time, we didn't really have anything tangible that we could craft a social compact around.
What do you mean?
We now have, for instance, we now have a compact with labor and with business around tangible issues. For instance, with business, we are working together at a very deep level on issues like energy, on issues like logistics, on issues like crime and corruption. Now, you could have a compact that is an empty shell. But now we have a compact that is real and practical, where we are working together on an ongoing basis, and where I meet business community government every 6 weeks. With labor, we are able to meet to discuss issues of policy, issues that matter to labor. Those are practical issues. And all that now remains. Let me start off by saying, and we've had sector compacts. Sector compacts where we've been working together. And I have no doubt whatsoever that all this makes up the real key elements of what a compact should look like. And maybe what we thought, maybe we're too ambitious by thinking that we will have a compact, and even then I think it would have been an empty compact. Now we have the ingredients, the real rich ingredients of a real compact. Talk about, say, for instance, a bullet train. We are now at a stage where we are going to have, and Cabinet has been going through that process, we are now going to have trains from Johannesburg to Durban, from Johannesburg to the Limpopo province, where we are now looking at even saying we now want a tender to look at any of these corridors to be started off, any one of the two to be started off for a train service. Now, that is the progress possibly that is not seen out there by the public, but it is some of these things do take quite a long time.
But you need electricity for them.
Well, electricity.
And you were the chair of the war room.
Well, the chair of the war room, I mean, that in itself is a misnomer, because I got to a point where when I saw that there was not much being achieved, I went to President Zuma and I said, I want to get out of this. I want to get out of this. And I said, appoint a CEO, a certain gentleman as a CEO, to be the only entry person into ESCOM, because we had multiple entries into ESCOM. We had the war room, we had the chairman of ESCOM, we had the CEO, we had this one and the ministry and so forth. And I said, it doesn't work. I said, I want to stop this role because it is leading us nowhere. Get one person who must be responsible and be the entry point. And he went ahead and appointed someone who then became the key CEO of ESCOM. So that role, for instance, was a role that was not really impactful, if I may say so. It wasn't impactful. And that is why I took the initiative to say, I'd like to stop in this role. Because if it was an impactful role, I would have said, yes, I want to continue. But I went forward and said, no, I want to stop. Nobody ever says, I want to stop a thing that, you know, sort of gives them a position or whatever. So what I'm saying is that these have been years of recovery. And there are times when I wish, you know, one can fully explain the damage that had been done.
What's stopping you from explaining it?
No, I
or are you shielding
comments? No, I'm not shielding anyone. And I just need to explain the real nuts and bolts. Because when I say the damage that had been done, for instance, to SARS. Earlier today I was talking to President Thabo Mbeki, and we were talking about what was done in SARS. And he is even more descriptive because he has studied the Newgen report in such depth, and he goes through every element of it. And I said, President, that's precisely what we have had to deal with. And the corrective measure that I took when I dismissed the then CEO and instituted the Commission of Inquiry was to actually stop state capture and to go into some depth of what wrong had been done there. So we stopped that, we plugged that hole, and the NPA was another, and the Hawks was another, and many of those things that had accumulated to take our country on the wrong path. And so it's been rebuilding, recovery, and renewal. And that's what the 5 years have constituted. And I do firmly believe that we are now better and well positioned to then take this country forward, particularly also having heeded even the voice from business about the economic reforms that needed to take place. Because there were so many things that had not been done correctly, where we had been dropping the ball. And in some cases, the chickens have come home to roost, and we are having to deal with them. So we are in that position now of perfecting the recovery process and rebuilding. And of course, COVID did not serve us well. But we are one of those countries in the world that dealt so effectively with COVID, but not only in South Africa, but we dealt with the COVID scourge also on our continent, and we did extremely well when it comes to that.
Mr. President, on the matter of renewal, let's talk about the party's renewal and the lessons that it's learned. Because you will say that, but on the other hand, you'll have instances where we've been told how the ANC has used its majority in Parliament to shield wrongdoing. That happened again, many would argue, when it came to the Phala Phala report. So what renewal is there? I'm asking this because of the trust deficit that this party is now trying to close almost on a daily basis as you edge closer to that 2024 election.
Well, renewal is not a one-day event. It never could be a one-day event. A renewal is a process, and I've been explaining this even within the party itself, that sometimes Renewal, there will be 2 steps back and 3 steps forward. And we keep learning and improving ourselves. And I was saying earlier, for instance, on the issue of dealing with colleagues who are caught up in, say, maybe criminal activity and so forth. We used to say in the ANC, innocent until proven guilty. We now, at a conference of the ANC, changed and said, no, we've got to do better than that. So that has shown how renewal has been happening. And indeed, that sometimes happens to be so in many other parties. They go through those painful pangs of moving forward in dealing with issues of renewal. So I see that as a process and learning lessons as we move on. And that is precisely where the ANC is. The ANC is by no means perfect, like nobody is perfect, but at the same time we are learning and making ourselves better. And I see the ANC being renewed as we move on.
So how do you respond to, during your tenure, some former leaders saying they might not want to campaign for the ANC? Others have criticized your leadership. Mm-hmm. What does that do to you in terms of the ability to lead the organization and instill discipline, for an example?
Well, we must accept that in life we don't always see things the same way. Just like in your own family and my family, we don't see things the same way. Some are oriented towards liking certain things and disliking others. And so in the ANC as well, we will forever have, different views on a number of things. There are certain things that unite us and bind us together. And so as we move on, it's a question of, convincing each other and persuading each other as we move on. And that is how life goes. And so I remain confident that, as they say in Afrikaans, die agter ons sal ook in die kraal kom. The ox that is way at the back will also come into the kraal. And that's the level of patience that I have. That's the level of confidence that I have. That whatever the problems are, we will find solutions for. And I was taught that there is no problem without a solution. So all we have to do is to find a solution.
And Mr. President, as you wind down the 6th administration, one would say that the recent case at the International Court of Justice is one of your successes, both from a party president but also a state president level. But I do wonder if you have any concerns about the economic ramifications of this David and Goliath case, as some have described it, that we decided to take on the Goliath, and there may be some ramifications after doing that. Does that concern you at all? Was that part of your assessments before actually going to the ICJ?
Well, every action is always accompanied by some risk. And so in this case as well, there are risks, to be quite honest. But we acted out of principle. We acted out of a deep felt and seated principle where, as we observed the situation of the Palestinians, we saw in them, their suffering, a reflection of what we have gone through. And believing in solidarity and believing in human rights which underpins our foreign policy or international relations. And also remembering what Nelson Mandela taught us, that our freedom will never be complete until the freedom of the Palestinians is also achieved. And having raised the issue as the killings were happening in Gaza, and even approached the Israeli government that this is looking like a genocide. Could you stop? And we raised it at the UN, at many other forums. And when that was not heeded, because of our own history, because the suffering that the Palestinians are going through is no different. Of course, I think they are going through much worse than we did. There was no real active, direct killing of genocide like we went with bombs and fighter jets bombing. But we felt that it touched our souls and we needed to respond. And the response that we felt we needed to take was not to take up arms and go and defend them, but to go to an international institution, to speak in the United Nations, and to also go and speak in the court. And this is a court that many of those countries in the West set up. They put that court together. And we decided to go there because courts are arbiters in disputes. And so we took a simple and straightforward action. If we had taken up arms to go and fight against Israel in Gaza, I would have said, yes, maybe there could be a punishment against us. But we just took an ordinary step of going to a court to go and put forward a case. And a case which we persuaded the judges to listen to. So in the end, the judges are the ones who took the decision.
So how far are we, Mr. President, your executive, in considering the closure of the Israeli embassy here in South Africa?
Our parliament took a resolution to get the executive to consider the decision that they have taken. So that is still under consideration. But the executive took a much more bolder decision of going to the International Court of Justice. And the issue of the resolution that they took in Parliament is still under consideration. It's a matter that will be considered. But we were much more direct and bold in taking the decision that we took, which we hope is recognized by South Africans. And in fact, many South Africans have voiced their opinion in support of what the government has done. And we're very pleased that we have an outstanding legal team that represented us, including our Minister of Justice. Young as he is, he stood in the international forum and represented us, and Minister Pandwe as well, who also went. So
you're winding down your 6th administration at SONA next week. Are you giving us an election date?
The election date will be announced soon. We're still in the time frame to be able to hold our elections, and we will follow the precepts of our constitution. So an election date will be announced soon.
All right, Mr.
When do you want it to be?
Preferably not in winter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's President Cyril Ramaphosa. Of course, after hosting an ANC-NEC meeting over the weekend, they've just begun their cabinet lekgotla as well. And the big news coming out of that executive committee meeting, that former President Jacob Zuma has been suspended. But lots to chew on there, Thabo, when it comes to what President Cyril Ramaphosa has done, what his critics have to say about him, and what plans they have going forward.